the last kind of conversion we're going to be doing is taking decimals and putting them back into fractions. So if I was to take this decimal 0.54, I'm going to change it into a fraction. Now the best way to do it is actually just remember that this decimal, if we say it properly, we would actually say 54 hundredths. Because if we say 54 hundredths, now we're actually looking at this in fraction form. If we say 54 hundredths, that really means 54 out of 100. Okay, and that's very easy to just take that 54, put it over 100. Now we do have to put that into lowest terms. Okay, so I do have a common factor between numerator and denominator of 2. So I would divide numerator and denominator by 2 to get 27 over 50. I have no more common factors between that. The only factors of 27 are 3, 9, and 27, and I cannot divide 50 by any of those things. Okay, so that one would be in lowest terms. Now, if you forget how to say your decimal number and you're not quite sure about which place value everything is in, because sometimes we forget, I'm going to show you another way that you can do it. Okay, so when I want to put this into a fraction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by looking at, here's where my decimal point is. Okay, so I care about everything now on the right-hand side of the decimal point. So on the right-hand side of the decimal point, I have 1, 2 numbers, right? I've got the 5 and the 4. So I have 2 numbers to the right-hand side of the decimal point, right? 1, 2, 1, 2. 2 numbers to the right-hand side of the decimal point. I'm going to take a fraction, and I'm going to start out by always putting a 1 in front. And because there are 1, 2 values to the right-hand side of the decimal point, 1, 2 values to the right-hand side of the decimal point, I'm going to fill in 2 zeros, right? 1 for the 5, and then a second one for the 4. There were 2 numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal, so I put 1 0 for that 5, and then the second 0 for that 4. Okay? After that, I take all the numbers on the right-hand side, 54, and I simply just put those up top. Okay, so I've taken my decimal number and I've changed it into a fraction. Now again, just like we did on the last page, we would obviously have to make sure that these guys are also in lowest terms. So putting them in lowest terms, we still get the same thing. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say I've got, we'll make this one even a little bit trickier. Let's say we've got we'll say 3, 5, 5. Okay. No, I want to change that. I want to go 325. Makes it more fun. Okay. 0.325. So I could remember that if I was to say this name properly, it would be, I would say 325 thousandths, right? So that 5 is in the thousandths position. Okay. But if I've forgotten, I'm going to start out, here's my fraction. I'm always going to put a 1 in the bottom. I'm going to look at the numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal point. So everything on the right-hand side of the decimal point. I see 1, 2, 3 numbers there, which means I need 1, 2, 3 zeros, right? My first 0 matches with that 3 on the right-hand side. My second 0 matches with that 2 on the right-hand side. My third 0 matches with that third number on the right-hand side of the decimal. Okay? So I've got my 1, 2, 3 zeros following the 1, and I'm going to take that 325 and I'm simply going to put it on top. Okay, so my numerator is 325 and my denominator is 1000. Now again, this makes sense. The name of this number is 325 thousandths. 325. I've run out of space. 5 thousandths. Okay, well that's exactly what my fraction now says, right? I have 325 over 1,000. That's 325 thousandths. Okay, now if you forget what your decimal place value is, you can use that method of counting decimal places, right? 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, so 1, 2, 3 zeros to the right of your 1, and that will work. Okay. All right, we have to put this into lowest terms. I see that both numbers end in a 0 or a 5. That tells me that both numbers are divisible by 5. So I'm going to divide both numbers by 5, numerator and denominator. And that's going to give me 325 divided by 5 gives me 65. And 1,000 divided by 5 is 100, or 200, sorry. And again, both numbers end in 5 or 0, so both numbers are still divisible by 5 again. So I'm going to divide numerator and denominator both by 5, and that's going to give me now, I've got 13 over 40. Okay, and so that's my fraction now in lowest terms. Okay, now we have talked a little bit about numbers and percentages that are bigger than 100. So it is possible to have something like this, 2.45. And how do we look at this one? Okay, so same thing. If I was to say it properly, I'm going to be saying 2 and 45 hundredths. Okay, so when I look at my fraction, I know I'm going to be having my hundredths. And just in case I wasn't sure, looking at the numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal point, I have the 4 as my first one, so that matches up with my first 0. I have 5 as my second number on the right, and that matches up with my second 0. So 2 decimal places gives me 2 zeros. Then I'm going to take that 45 and I'm going to put it up top. The thing that's different here is in front, I don't have a 0. On the last few questions I've had a 0, but now I've got this 2. And all I'm going to do with that 2 is I'm actually just going to leave it in front. That 2 means I have 2 whole numbers, right? I have 2 wholes. I'm going to leave it then, it would be 2 as the whole number in front, and then I deal with the decimal part the same way I did before. Now when I put this into lowest terms, I'm going to keep that 2 out front, and the only thing that's going to change is my fraction portion. So 45 out of 100, 45 and 100, they both have a common factor of 5 because they both end in 0 or 5. So I can divide the top and bottom by 5. And that's going to give me 9 over 20. Okay, so how do we handle it when we have a number that's not 0 in front? Whatever the number is, leave it in front of the fraction. So just like it's in front or on the left-hand side of the decimal, this number is now in front or on the left-hand side of our fraction. Okay, so nothing really changes for that one. All right, one last one. Okay, if we were to have something like 0, well, no, let's have something different in front. We'll make it 1.234, and then I'm going to make it a 6 because we've got to make it a little bit more interesting at the end here. Okay, so this one is 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places on the right-hand side of that decimal point, which means we are now in the 10,000ths position. The 6 is in the 10,000ths position. If I'm going to be writing this as a fraction, I know I'm going to start with a 1, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal point, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal point. I need 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros in my denominator. The numerator of the fraction is going to be that 2, 3, 4, 6 in order. 2, 3, 4, 6 in order. But it wasn't 0.2346, it was 1.2346. I'm going to take that 1 and just put it in front of my fraction. Now I can see that both numbers are even, right? They both end in a 6 and a 0. That means both numbers are even. Therefore, my numerator and denominator are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2. And generally, if you are ever making your own videos, it's a good idea if you pick these numbers beforehand, because you will have actually had a chance to do the calculations. But your teacher is clearly not that smart. So 2,346 divided by 2 is going to give us 1,173. Okay, now we have to see if there's any common factors between those. I don't think that there is. 5,000 doesn't have any factors that are going to match up with 1,173. So that's in lowest terms as best as it can be. And that is, quite simply, how we change decimals into fractions. Okay, so key ideas to take away. Count how many decimal places on the right-hand side of your decimal point. Put that same number of zeros on the right-hand side of a 1. That's your denominator. Take all those numbers from the right-hand side of your decimal point and simply put them up top. Now, what would happen if I had something like this, 0.006, with this one here, 1, 2, 3 numbers on the right-hand side of that decimal point, 1, 2, 3 of them. So I got to have a fraction with a 1, and then 1, 2, 3 zeros, right? So make sure that the number of decimal places matches my number of zeros. When I put that number on the top, 006, right? I take all the numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal point and I put them up top. Well, now this 006 doesn't make a lot of sense. We usually don't write a 0 in front of a number, so I could actually get rid of that 0 and that 0, and I just have now 6 over 1,000. Okay, 6 over 1,000, both numbers would be even, and I can divide both numbers by 2, and that's going to leave us with 3 over 500, and that would be in lowest terms. Okay, so if you have leading zeros, when you put them up top, okay, those leading zeros just disappear. It doesn't make sense to say 006 unless you're in a James Bond film, and that's your secret agent number. All right, that is converting decimals to fractions.